everyone tells you that, gaining muscle mass and basically, looking jacked, like it takes a lot of effort. And like, you gotta like live in the gym and you gotta do all this stuff. But like, if I'm being honest, but it's not really as hard as people make it seem. Now, again, I'm not gonna say it's like, what I mean, that you can like never put in any effort and that you would get results. Obviously not. But it's a lot easier than people make it seem to be, right? Like the number one thing that I realized is that it's like if I had just focused on these three things, or yeah, and I think I mentioned these in my previous videos as well, I would have definitely gained muscle mass faster, right? There's diet, I feel like that's like number one, and there's sleep, and then there's exercise, right? Right, which is crazy because you would expect to exercise, especially if you're a beginner and you don't know any better. You would assume that exercise would be number one, but that's obviously not the case. Like diet and sleep are definitely above that for sure. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be honest, like this week, I did not work out too much. Like I was a little busy, so I only worked out like once a week. Ideally, I would have worked out twice. Like, at the same time, I wasn't feeling too well this week, and I was kind of busy with some other stuff. So that's like mainly why. But I didn't lose any like muscle mass. Like my weight has basically been about the same, right? And my build is basically about the same as well. Right? A lot of people, they think that, oh, if I like don't work out, that I'm gonna lose all my gains, right? And the funny thing is, I would actually argue that it's okay to take a break sometimes. You know what I mean? Now, of course, if you're like starting off, I would not recommend having this mentality because I've noticed that like, especially beginners, especially when you're like, especially when you like have like no discipline, especially a lot of you, right? Like you work out for maybe like a month or two, and then you stop. Right? With people like you, with people like you cannot stop. You just need to work out like basically every day. With people that like, you know what I mean, just like have like no discipline. Yeah, like people like that probably should work out every day. Not because necessarily it's the most optimal, but because you have like no discipline. And like if you don't do it for like if you skip even a day, someone like you would unfortunately stop working out altogether. Right? Like I know so many people who like they'll work out for like a month or two and stop after that for like the next 6 months. And then somehow some crazy like motivation comes to their mind. And then they'll start again, right? For again a month or two or a couple of weeks, and then they'll stop. And then, the cycle continues for the rest of their lives, and they never actually make any progress. And at that point, it's like, I would rather just not even work out. Because it's like, that's such a, like, high dopamine, low dopamine, like, type of way of living. Like, you're gonna live like a miserable life in that sense. You know what I mean? Right? I like to encourage people to, actually seek to strive for their health, but it's like at the same time, like, could you imagine that? It's like you work out, you're in good shape for like a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then you stop altogether, and then you're basically shit, right? And I had like a relative, a family relative, who was like this, right? Or a cousin of mine, right? I'm not gonna say names of anyone, but it's like, the idea that he had was like, oh, like, how long before I get six packs? You know what I mean? How long does that take? You know what I mean? Okay, and like how long until like I'm jacked and like what I mean? Basically his mindset was like, how long can I do this and never have to do it again? And it's like, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, Loki had like this amazing quote. It's like, well, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it was basically I saw this in a video where someone asked him like, about working out and like consistency. And he said, "Oh, why would I brush my teeth if I brushed it like 20 years ago?" You know what I mean? Like everyone, like you've been brushing your teeth your entire life, right? And you know what I mean? And that's what's like, what I mean? The terrible toothpaste, with fluoride in it, right? Which destroys your pineal gland, right? But let's assume you're using the organic, right? But assume you're using the organic toothpaste and the toothbrush, right? Like you brushed your teeth yesterday, and you woke up today and you still brush your teeth, and you've been doing it for the rest of your life, and you'll probably continue for the rest of your life, hopefully, right? Nasty ass motherfuckers who probably don't brush their teeth, right? But like it's yeah. But the point is, it's like you brush your teeth for the rest of your life. Working out is no different. Now again, I'm not saying you have to necessarily do it every day. You hear me? But what my point is, you have to do it consistently, and especially in the beginning, where like someone like you like have like no effort, no discipline. Then it's like okay, you probably should just work out every day. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's. It doesn't even have to be like a crazy workout every day. Right? Most of my in between rest days, yeah, I call them active recovery days because right. I mean, I haven't low key been hitting my active recovery days this week mainly because I've been focused on other things and whatnot. Right? Or like before when on the process of, as you guys saw, like I gained like muscle mass rate about like 10 pounds, right? I would actually argue probably more. But the point is, the point is, you know, the point is, it's like, active recovery days, I feel like are what is essential, right? Because they don't have to be this crazy like thing. So, for example, like the split that I was following, especially when it comes to gaining muscle mass, was upper lower twice. So I would do legs basically twice, lower body twice, right? So I would have one day for hamstring and one day for quads, right? I have one day for upper body, and then occasionally if I had extra time, I would hit arms, or just a day for arms. Yes, so shoulder, bicep, triceps, a little bit of forearms if I could, right? But yeah, in my active recovery days, I feel like is what actually really made me like ripped and lean even though I was gaining muscle mass. In fact, I talked about this, how I got leaner while gaining muscle mass, right? Which I feel like a lot of bodybuilders, because of the way that they think. And because again, most bodybuilders give shit advice when it comes to especially diet, I've noticed. Exercise, not so much, to be honest with you, but diet especially. Yeah, they give like absolute shit advice. I would not trust like 99% of these bodybuilders when it comes to diet, especially. With exercise, yeah, I mean, I'll be fair and give credit where it's due. It's pretty right for the most part, right? But it's like with diet, man, like these bodybuilders, bro. Like they have such a weird way of thinking. It's like just calories in, calories out. These dudes are so retarded. They genuinely believe that 100 calories of an apple and 100 calories of like a Rice Krispie treat is literally the same thing. That's how retarded these people actually are, right? Like to me, that's just insane that they actually believe that calories in, calories out is the only thing that matters. Wait, they're probably the type of people that if you give them 100 calories of rat poison and 100 calories of like a lettuce, they would actually think it was the same exact thing. Right? Right? Like that's how retarded they actually are. 100 calories of steak, 100 calories of rat poison, they would actually think it's the same exact thing. Right? And a lot of them also buy into like the whole propaganda of like, you know, that like fats are bad for you and whatnot. That's also another thing, right? The more simple you keep your diet, the more easy it is to follow. Right? I'll probably make another video because like for like how you know, I made it before in the past, like how I quit junk food forever, right? And I haven't touched it since like 2024. It's basically been over like 2 years, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, how many people that are so-called disciplined have actually done something like that, right? Right? You don't know anyone, right? You can think of off the top of your head. That's like up there when it comes to just right. Yes. It's my organic black coffee. And I actually put, side point, but I put beetroot powder, lion's mane mushroom, and raw honey in it. Like glyphosate raw honey. Glyphosate free raw honey, right? Without any glyphosate. Which is kind of hard to find, right? But yeah. The point is, man, it's like gaining muscle mass can be very effortless depending on where you are in your like if you're a guy who already is pretty consistent, right, and you go like pretty often, right, or like you're like kind of confused about like what kind of workout routine you should do or shouldn't do. But this is what I would recommend. You know what I mean? Honestly, I would say yeah, like joining my program will definitely be the best. Biohacking for MMA. Oh yeah, I definitely go over it in there. Right, you can also join the Patreon, right, where you get like more. You get the ability to ask me more exclusive questions and stuff like this, right? And you'll get like more like help with exactly what you should do or shouldn't do, right? Right. And again, I'm not gonna give you like I'm not here to make you paranoid. Like you got to do this and this and this. Like I think the basics should be like what you really focus on, especially in the beginning, and then you add in certain things to supplement that. You know, like I said, diet for sure. Like you know, because like let's say, what's the point of gaining mass if it's not like muscle basically, or like you just gain a bunch of bloated, overweight like fat basically, right? Like you just gain slop, or you just gain slop because you did not eat correctly, right? And you didn't like, especially with the eating stuff, right? It's actually crazy. I know this will sound crazy, right? But believe it or not, I feel like diet low key, and a lot of people say you can't outwork a bad sleep schedule or you can't outwork a bad diet, which is actually very true. But I know that, again, this is gonna sound like again, don't like ignore your sleep. I'm not saying go and ignore your sleep, right? But I feel like a good diet can actually beat bad sleep. I know it's like a super controversial take, but I'm just telling you from my experience. Right now, again, I've been sleeping a lot better. Right? I've been focusing on that, right? But and like even before, right, I had this moment a little bit where you know what I mean, that I wasn't sleeping the best, but I still made a lot of muscle mass gains, right? Because again, I didn't beat it by like having biphasic sleep. So I guess you could argue that I did have good sleep, but no, I didn't have good sleep in the traditional sense of like 8 hours per se. Right? Even though I'm just like one sleep or 8 hours. Right? Biphasic sleep, in my opinion, is a lot better. Right? Especially like if you have the time of day to do it. You know what I mean? And even if you can't do it every day, I think it's really beneficial to still do it occasionally when you can in the week. Right? The point is though, right, is that yeah, like this muscle mass stuff is not too hard if you already have the discipline for it. Like I've been working out for a long time, for a while, and it's like why did I reached my goal? A lot of people were like they would have like doubled down, and like it's like within our like hustle culture mindset that we have in the West, a lot of people would like, oh, this is just the beginning, and like honestly, I kind of had that for a second, but then I was like, I had to sit down and think, would gaining more muscle mass actually help me? Not necessarily. Right? Maybe in the future I'll hop back on, but I don't think like gaining another 10 pounds would help me. Right? I think yeah, like maybe gaining like 5 pounds would help me. Right? But like going above and beyond to try and gain like 10 more pounds or 15 more pounds, I don't think that would necessarily help me, especially with goals that I have. Right? And again, like especially since we kind of like focus on MMA in this channel. Right? You have to ask yourself like if you gain too much muscle mass, wouldn't that make it a little hard for you to cut? Right? Like if you gain like a crazy amount of weight, like 20 pounds, right? Like and it also depends. Like you have to ask yourself, like, how much do I really need to gain for my weight category? Because at the same time, it's like I don't believe in massive weight cutting. which actually would be another great topic, actually. Right? I'll write that down, obviously. Right? Because I feel like there's no one really talks about how to do it properly. Like a lot of there's like people that like prescribe certain medications or something. I forgot what it's called. But I remember, I remember back when I did high school wrestling, there were these like two kids. Right? One way they would cut weight is by taking some like some pill that they got from CVS or something. I forgot the exact name. I'm trying to remember. But like they like offered it to me, but I was like, why the hell would I take this shit? You know what I mean? Because it's not like I had to lose a whole lot of weight either at the time. But it's like, there's for sure some kind of side effect. I just knew there was for sure some kind of side effect, which is why I refused. Right? And it got me thinking, like, hmm, what would make you want to do something like this? Like, to me, that's just absurd. Right? To me, that's just absurd. That, people would actually take like actual drugs to try and lose weight. Right? But again, this is a muscle mass. Right? We're talking about gaining muscle mass. So, right. I know I do get into these tangents a little bit, but I think it's also kind of good to talk about like things from multiple things. Right? That way you guys can like really understand where I'm like really coming from. Because everyone pretty much does it wrong. Right? Like your MMA coach definitely does it wrong. Right? Your grappling coach, your striking coach, right? They all do it wrong. Right? And even like these bodybuilders do it wrong. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about gaining muscle mass. It's also like, what's the point of gaining muscle mass if you just feel bloated and you feel like shit? Then you probably didn't gain muscle mass entirely, right? You probably gained slop. You probably gained slop mass, as I like to call it. And think about it like that, like how many guys gain so-called muscle mass and their like hormones are like fucked up, right? Isn't it weird? Like how many of these bodybuilders like they end up getting like something like cancer or something something crazy because they ate like even GSP, right? Like because they ate like absolute shit, and eventually it adds up. So it's like I don't want you to just think in the short term of like just your fighting career, but I want you to think of like because life is not just your fighting career. It's not. This is your fighting career, depending on when you start and everything. Like this may not even count for like even when you started in childhood. Right? Even that stuff, like your actual like combat career, let's say, it's not a whole lot, right? And it's like, because of this window, unfortunately, a lot of people end up trying to extend it where they'll fight even like when they're like really old, right? And it's like unnecessary, right? They should have probably retired a while back, but they didn't. Right? Yeah, right. So don't, right? This is your fighting career, and then this is your entire life, right? You want to focus on not just your fighting career, but like living a good, healthy life. GSP is a prime example of this. Even after retiring, he's still healthy compared to his competitors. Why? Because that's also another thing. It's like people refuse to get better, especially as they age. That's what I realized. Like people refuse to get better as they age, right? Whereas GSP, even after retirement, still seeks like MMA knowledge, nutritional knowledge, exercise knowledge, right? Which I think is very interesting, right? Especially some of the ways he works out and stuff like that. I think is very cool and interesting, right? Like he's still building up upon, what he used to do, right? Which I feel like, especially some I noticed like these boxers, like they just get, as I have like MMA fighters too, but like a lot of them, like once they retire, they just get fat, and obese, and like they start becoming alcoholics and drinking, right? Prime example, I think it was Adrian Broner. Right now, if you've seen his live streams, right, it's like this guy was like on top of it, and then like for whatever reason he stopped boxing, and then yeah, just got fat and like alcohol became an alcoholic, right? And again, this is not like me trying to diss on the guy, but it's like you can fall that far from grace. You know what I mean? Like without like actually like you know what, man? Maybe I should I should instead of like continuing it on after your career, right? Just be I feel like it's a really good example of like someone who did not do that. You know, what I mean? He didn't become fat or like pick up some bad habit. Right. Adrian Broner isn't the only one, to be fair. I think there's Maidana who also I think did that as well. Oh yeah. I think he also became fat and alcoholic too, funny enough. Right. I don't know what it is with these fighters becoming fat and alcoholic, right? I love Prince to see him, he also became fat. Not alcoholic though. Right. He just became fat. Crazy, crazy fat though, you know? But yeah. It's like I think you gotta have the mindset of like, I'm gonna keep improving. That's like really helps you keep going with like gaining muscle mass and like just improving overall with like your MMA journey, especially, and like combat sports journey in general, right? And journey in life in general, right? You gotta have that growth mindset, like for the rest of your life, right? Because if once you stop, then you stagnate, and like you go into like you get stuck in that rut, and God forbid, you may get stuck in that rut for like a very long time, right? You may get stuck in that rut for like years on end, months on end. Like a lot of people think, oh, I'm just stuck in this rut. You gotta focus on getting out of that rut as fast as possible. Right? And this goes for all of us, me included, right? Whenever you find yourself stuck in a rut, you gotta like focus and like double down and like try to get out of it like ASAP. Because if you don't, then you'll be stuck in that rut for the next couple of months to years even. Right? And you'll like constantly think, damn, I gotta stop being fat, I gotta stop or whatever rut it is. Right? Like I gotta fix this. I gotta get out of here. Right? But like you don't actually put in any effort, and then yeah. The point I think what makes gaining going back to the point though, what makes gaining muscle mass effortless is that it's really just about consistency. If I'm being honest, like you're gonna have days where you mess up for sure, and keeping that 100% like you have a life. You know what I mean? Things happen. Right? Something comes up. It's about like it's not necessarily about you know hitting it every day. Although, especially in the beginning, that's like very important. It's more so about consistency. So like, let's say you like miss a day, right? For whatever reason, maybe something came up, right? Like I don't know, like a funeral or something, right? Something came up, something important. That's why you couldn't work out that day, right? Well, hop on as soon as you can, right? Hop on right back within the next day, right? Hop right back on. Right? Because if you delay it, especially if you're like the type of guy who hasn't made this into his lifestyle, you're gonna stop working out, or you're gonna stop being focused on training, and you're gonna basically leave it for a week. Then a week becomes 2 weeks, then eventually becomes a month, and then becomes a couple months, 2 years, right? So yeah, if you find yourself not being able to work out one day or 2 day, hop on back ASAP. Right? That's what will keep you in that consistency. All right, anytime like I couldn't work out, so especially I mean besides this week, and you know, but at the same time my goal is like a little different now. Like now I'm not focused on muscle mass, but if muscle mass is like your priority or whatever your goal is, hop back on that goal ASAP, right? ASAP. Because if you don't, like I said, the rut becomes deeper and deeper until you can't get out, right? So we don't want that. I don't know if you heard that cracking. Oh man. Okay. But the point is, yeah, get out of that rut ASAP. Right? I think I've kind of like made my points. Gaining muscle mass is pretty effortless if you, ironically enough, put in the effort. Right? But yeah, hopefully, if you do need more help with how to gain muscle mass effortlessly, you can join my program in the link below, Biohacking for MMA, right? And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, like this video, hit that bell notification, and until greatness returns, I shall leave you in the echoes of excellence.